Hello and welcome back. And have you guys noticed UniFi going a bit kind of hardware release nuts of late? Towards the end of 2024, we saw them launch finally their network attached storage product. Then we saw a slew of new surveillance products in both AI and non-AI and camera related appliances all come to the furore. And now in February 2025, we have seen the brand go absolutely nuts on their Wi-Fi 7 series. Now, across this table, there's a bunch of devices, but today I want to talk about this one. I want to talk about the UniFi Cloud Gateway Fiber. This is their new gateway device. Again, similar to that of a router. This video should be going out at the same time, give or take a few days, as the UniFi Dream Router 7 and the UniFi Express 7. Two different solutions for different kinds of utility. This one, arriving at 249 nika, is an incredibly bandwidth-rich device here, arriving with the opportunity to scale up to NVMe SSD storage inside. It also arrives with 4 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports there, one of which are PoE, and we have 3 10 GBE connections, 2 WAN, 1 LAN, and 2 of them being fiber, and 1 of them being copper. Support and control of well over 50 UniFi devices and over 500 clients. It also supports their surveillance platform Protect, which you can install inside on their SSD. Again, it's an optional SSD. We'll talk about the good and the bad about that later. Inside there, and that can support up to 15 cameras of HD quality, 8 cameras of 2K quality, and 5 cameras of 4K quality there. All managed from this teeny tiny 250 nika box, the design of which is fairly, it's UniFi. It looks exactly like what you would expect. It's an external PSU as well, helping to deliver that 30 watt PoE port there. So straight away, what the hell is this for? Why on earth have they released the router, the Express, and the cloud gateway all at the same time? All 3 boxes have very different target audiences in mind. The router is a more traditional home prosumer SMB, light SMB solution there for managing wired and wireless traffic. Whereas the Express box, the little tiny one there, that one was more of a gateway device that you could scale up and remain affordable. This is your high performance alternative to the Express. Now, it doesn't have any Wi-Fi capabilities, and I'm reluctant to call this a router in any way. It crosses the line a lot, but this device is more about wired connections. So let's talk about those wired connections. Now, the 4 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports there, it's great to see that they've not included any standard gigabit LAN there. We've got 2.5G all across the board. There are definitely going to be some users disappointed that there's only 1 PoE port on this. I would say this is not trying to oust a PoE switch, and I wouldn't see that power over Ethernet port there as lacking, being only just 1 port. I would see it as an extra being included in here. Now, what can you do with that port? Well, going back to this side of the table, there's a plethora of things you can add. You can add a range. They've got a range of, I believe, 4 and 8 port PoE powered switches here. You can also power them with USB if you choose. If you like, you can go ahead and add cameras. You can add bunches of cameras, but of course, only 1 PoE port here means you can only establish 1 cable connection there. Alternatively, and we mentioned the lack of Wi-Fi connectivity, you can go ahead and add access points. Wi-Fi 7 access points at that, and they've got several different variations, all of which are PoE powered, all of which have got 2.5 gigabit Ethernet on them as well, so you're not getting capped when you're connecting it, although this is not a review of these. Alternatively, you've got other access points like the wall, and finally, you've got scalable options like going alongside the cameras, adding AI functionality, and they've got enhanced AI capabilities being rolled in with their surveillance as boxes that you add either as one that enhances just the camera or ones that enhance your entire surveillance setup there. The point I'm making is that PoE port there, I wouldn't look at that as why is there only 1. I would say at 250 nika, something you're going to hear a lot, I'm great to see that included. Now, those 3 10 gigabit Ethernet ports there, again, I mentioned earlier on, 2 of them are WAN, 1 of them is LAN. Later on during the software review, I'll tell you one of the reasons I've got a bit of a problem with the way they've approached this. But I will say right now that the fact that you can roll in your internet service provider there, that's going to be greater than gigabit in a lot of places around the world directly into this is good. I do think Utilising the 10G as our WAN is a bit overkill, and I'll walk you through that process later on. But nonetheless, having a failover there as well, one being copper, one being SFP, gives you quite a lot of flexibility. And of course, don't forget, you can take hold of those SFP to copper transceivers as well. But do keep in mind they get quite hot. I would never run two of those side by side. Apparently it has a 9.3 gigabit internal switching capacity, which means it's going to be able to handle any one of those big ports coming in and dividing it across the whole system. Again, keep in mind that dual LAN WAN architecture there, trunking them in the traditional sense isn't really going to work for you. And although you can add, things like NAS devices to these ports, you can add high performance switches to these ports to spread out the wealth of that bandwidth. Keep in mind, of course, that this is not a router or a switch. It is somewhere slightly in the middle. Now I want to talk about the M2 NVMe slot here. This does allow you to add M.2 NVMe storage to this. It doesn't have any baseline storage above and beyond a small drive that's taking care of the OS on this. And again, that is optional. Now, some of you might not like the fact that it's a paid optional extra and they didn't include it. Hell, they included an SD card with the UDR7, but I'm prepared to give them some slack. 250 NICA for this, and it's already a 2.5G and 3-port 10G switch with PoE. I think it's fair to say, given that it's also managed as well, I wouldn't have expected them to include it. I do have a gripe with that I'll talk about later on, but as you may already have seen, this device has got no USB ports. There's no USB, that's the only storage inside, and it's only one drive. So that means no RAID failover if that drive fails. If you've got your surveillance recordings on there, that's a bit of a pain. And no way to locally offset that date. You can't USB it onto something else. I'm not a tremendous fan of that. Now, the internal hardware in this, that CPU, it's an ARM-based processor there, an ARM, not a huge surprise, but I will say it's a decent enough one. It's the A7 III, it's a quad-core 2.2 gigahertz processor in there, and it also arrives with 3 gig of DDR4 memory there inside. Now, its predecessor and other routers in the market right now either arrived with the dual or the quad-core A5 III, which is a 1.7 gigahertz processor. So there is a scale up there in capability with that. It is still an efficient CPU, but it is going to use comparably more power compared to any of the other devices that came before it, but it can get more done. In terms of power consumption when the system's in operation, well, that's really going to depend on when all those ports are flying. I wasn't able, at least in this video, to do my full testing and get it completed in time because I wanted this to go out at the same time as my other videos because I'm doing some deeper 10GBE NAS testing on this and with the M.2 NVMe, something I'll talk about more later on in the software section. But this review is kind of part one of a two-part series of reviews because I want to see just how much of the performance this device is actually promising it can realistically do. Slamming 10GBE on a NAS, and particularly slamming this amount of connectivity on a NAS, is okay in principle, but you're going to have to be running something like this for quite an extended period of time before you really find any of the cracks. So it's going to take a little bit more time testing this before we can really find out if it can deliver. We may do another 3 months later or 1 month later on this when we include that testing. But I think for now, we want to learn about what the UniFi software that this arrives with is actually capable of. So let's crack over to the desktop and go through that software now. Making our way onto the UniFi Cloud Gateway Fiber, we can see pretty much exactly the same user interface you get from the majority of kind of controller-managed UniFi devices. In particular, things like the UniFi Express, the UniFi Router, and of course this new Cloud Gateway. So although I am going to go into a lot of details throughout the course of this video, I will also highlight, importantly, that I've already gone into a great deal of detail on the Router and the UniFi Express this week, I believe, if that video goes live. So I recommend checking those out for an even deeper look into those. I'm going to be revisiting this device in another video soon. I probably touched on it earlier on, largely because this is a much more hardware capable device. And therefore, I think, although I do want to do a review on this one more than any of the other devices in the new U7 lineup from UniFi requires the deepest look at, which is why there's going to be a follow-up video there. But Pretty much everything you see here is live information, which is what I love about the UniFi kind of single pane of glass user interface here. Notwithstanding, you can see exactly all of the different domains or devices where traffic is going back and forth to, as well as the device you're connecting on. But if you're using Wi-Fi devices, it can give you some idea about the connectivity that's going live. Then you've got the analytical stuff here at the top. And again, you can manage between different parameters there. And again, you can flick it between days, weeks. If I had the device for a month, I could do that. And on the left-hand side there, get real-time information about the device itself, the gateway, as well as any nodes, such as this Wi-Fi access point I've added, or individual client devices. Now, I touched on it earlier on. This device is incredibly close to that of a traditional router style, but with no wireless capabilities. But you can get things like the U7 Lite, which is about $100, I think $99 at the date of launch. And the U7 Lite, connecting it via the PoE port that the device has, allows you to add a Wi-Fi 7 access point within less than a minute or so. You connect it, it adopts it, and it's there. And then from that, you're able to manage those Wi-Fi networks, create multiple SSIDs, manage those SSID passwords, access, security, whether they're going to support MLO there for that multi-band management and usage, right the way down to, if you choose to, create an air gaps there for when it is activated, and different Wi-Fi protocol for security, all of which can be applied by adding that simple AP, with the majority of it being hard-baked into the UCG itself. But it's the management of the physical LANs that I think a lot of you are going to be interested in more than, adding SSIDs via those UniFi access points. So, for example, you can create plenty of VLANs here for all of your devices. You can bind them to physical ports if you choose, bind them to individual IDs and devices. Moreover, if you go into the ports and connections and we look at those physical ports, we can get real-time information about which VLANs it is on, as well as the speed and capability of each of those ports. The management of these is just A1. So, for example, when you look at the VLAN overview, you're able to see which of those ports are assigned to which VLAN. Moreover, when you look at the ports themselves, case in point, when we look at something like our WAN port here, when we look at the individual ports where we have got, currently I'm using port 5 as a WAN, which is a 10G. You have got 3 10G ports, with 2 of the 10Gs giving you the option of WAN or LAN, or taking advantage of them as a failover. And again, you can auto-negotiate them up and down. As much as I like all of this, and I do like the fact that it's got a bunch of 2.5 gigs as well, I know this is going to seem like such a petty complaint, but I don't like that I can't assign one of these 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports here as my WAN. Hello, and just a quick correction here to the original video. You can in fact use all of the individual 2.5 GBE ports as WAN if you choose. During my original testing, because I had 2 connections happening via the 10G WAN ports, the option didn't present itself. However, if you select only one WAN port on the 10 GBEs, the option to select a WAN option on the 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports will appear. So apologies for the error there. I just wanted to add this quick repair here, and thanks again to the user that reached out to me on this error. Okay, let's crack on with the video. Nonetheless, I can't really critique the analytical information this device affords to managing your LAN there. Again, we're looking at the insights of the data going back and forth there. We can look at the individual client devices that are assigned there. And again, remember, these client devices can be connected via a wired connection or wireless. So, for example, let's dig into one. This is a TerraMaster NAS that I'm going to be using for 10G testing in the video coming very, very soon. We can see that it's connected over a 2.5 gig port because I've not attached it to one of the 10G ports yet. On top of that, we can find out that real-time information about it and test the latency if we choose. From there, the long-term traffic and connectivity over time, and then from that, we can bind this device to a fixed IP address if we choose, as well as create traffic rules for that individual device, which can be very basic or pretty bloody extensive, which will allow us to assign long-term rules for these individual devices, not just a physical port. Remember, you can do both. comes to the actual routing of data throughout the system, there's quite a lot of customization afforded to you, notwithstanding the policies there that you can see on screen and the fixed traffic routes if you choose to. And again, you can break that down to the usual stuff you associate with opening ports and routers. But apart from that, you can also go into the system settings and really dig deep, notwithstanding activating that professional installer mode I'd mentioned before that really opens the door to what you can play with on this. By the way, that extends to the wireless connections if you want to change your location or at least take advantage of frequencies that you're not traditionally allowed to use unless you are a professional installer and you do so at your own risk. But managing things like SSH connections are all managed very, very easily, and I would argue in as user-friendly possible as they could actually be. Now, when you go into the control plane of the system, I've got mostly good news, and I say mostly. Number one, you can see straight away that you can go ahead if you choose to install those other UniFi applications. Internal house and business communication ones there, activating and connecting that PoE connected monitor, creating the inner space overview there, and of course their surveillance platform in Protect. And that sounds really good, right? Well, there's good and bad news there. You may already know about this device. One of the other things that makes it really, really appealing at $299 is, notwithstanding that it's got 3 10G connections, but on top of that, you've got the option of adding M.2 NVMe storage. Now, some users might be critical of the fact that this device does not arrive with an M.2 SSD included with it. I would argue at $299, again, 3 10GBE ports, I'm not really going to critique it for that reason. I actually like the fact I've got the M.2 storage option here. I think it's super fast storage as well. That's really good stuff, supporting up to 2 TB apparently. That's not my problem here. My problem is twofold. Number one, it is a single M.2 NVMe slot. There is no RAID, no failover, and if that SSD fails, you're going to lose everything that you're installing on it. And when it comes to some of those applications and services, if you were going to use it for surveillance, I would not want my surveillance footage to fail because there's only one SSD slot included. But it doesn't stop there. My other criticism is the fact that to install the SSD on this, you need to get one of these, an M.2 SSD tray. And this is what you use to mount the SSD, which then slides inside the side of the system. It's carefree. It's really straightforward. It's almost screwless, but you do have the little pin there on the top. Actually removing the little adapter only requires the pin that includes with the kit. My issue is you can't install an SSD without this thing. And this isn't included with your device. You have to get this separately. You have to get hold of one of these because the system, although it has the support of the M.2 NVMe slot, it does not arrive with the physical tray. That to me is cheeky as an optional purchase, and I'm not really a fan of the way UniFi have gone about that. It's not the end of the world, but if you're going to add a facility to your device to add under M.2 NVMe storage, include the adapter. Don't make me have to pay 15-20 NECA for a tray. Next up, let's talk about security, because I'd say in almost every case, this device has got some great default settings as well as great scale up in terms of what you might want to take advantage of later on. So for example, again, things like intrusion prevention, which can be set all the way down to dark web blocker and malicious IPs from an existing database, or you can go ahead straight into some of those traffic and firewall settings where you can really create a very unique kind of layout and protection methodology behind this cloud gateway for your business or for your home devices there, which go down to the MAC address, go down to the IP, or just go down to those external connectivity settings. Now, on top of that, if you go into the VPN settings there, we've already talked about this on my other video. I really like the way that UniFi has approached VPN management on the device with their teleport setting there. Again, we talked about that more in the previous video, but on top of that, a lot of the support of the third-party VPNs, it would have been very easy for them to block a lot of this stuff out, and they haven't. So if you do have a preferred VPN that you use, or more precisely, a VPN that you perhaps want to use more as a third party, just to have it across other devices, maybe you've got an existing account, you can get a lot of these built in, and some of the freebie ones as well. The site-to-site kind of SD-WAN stuff, configurable all the way from the ground up. Now, let's say you've noticed, maybe you got a notification from the device, or you've just been happening to look at your device and you've spotted that there is a device on the local area network that you either don't recognize or you know does not belong to that local area network. Well, number one, you can go ahead, of course, and block a device at any time if you choose to. It's very easy. And from there, that device's both MAC address and IP will be flagged moving forward there. Now, if you're not sure, you can dig a little bit more by going into the Insights tab. The Insight tab not only gives you some idea of those different sites and services that are being used on the internet, and if you see something on here that you don't know, you can go ahead and go, I'm not so sure about that. What exactly is going on with Let's Encrypt? And that's to do with the NAS that I'm running. But on top of that, if you see something on the list that you don't like, you can go ahead and right the way down to block the app or service if you choose to there. Moreover, if, for example, you're using your device and you want to know about the upload, download, and more precisely, country and restrictions about what is going to be accessing how and when, you can go ahead, for example, I can go into the last hour and I can see that the majority of services that I've been utilizing there are based in the US, but there is some pings over here going into some other regions. So let's look at that there. We've got Switzerland, and I can choose to block that if I choose to. And again, you can add that blocked geo list if I choose to. And it's just nice to be able to see that in different ways, whether it is that I'm looking at different devices and different connections and what exactly is connected to them at any given time, or going ahead, of course, to use that topography that all of the UniFi network equipment arrives with that allows us to see live where the internet is being used, which devices are the ones that are taking advantage of the internet services, and if a device has suddenly joined the network, just how busy it is. Now, frankly, I could spend a lot more time talking about this software, but again, at the risk of being repetitious to the other videos that have come out this week on UniFi's new Wi-Fi 7 setup, I'm going to be slightly restrictive on that. I am going to say that in the following video, after this one, I am going to be digging deep into that 10 GBE connectivity on this device. I want to know just how well it handles the packets of data on those connections. It's one thing to know that I'm going to be able to take advantage of 10G WAN, but what I want to do is have both a client device and a NAS at full 10G. I also then want to go into the settings and open up some of the jumbo frames and stuff like that, because I'm pleased to say you can adapt all of that stuff on this device if you choose to. You can go ahead and configure that. Alongside that 10G testing with jumbo frames opened up there at 9K, the other thing I want to look at is failover on this device. And if you're going to have a device that's got two 10 gig Ethernet ports there, having dual 10 gig failover port connectivity there is going to be very impressive for some. And what I really want to know is just how well this failover takes and how reliable it can be. I know you can distribute it as load balancing there to take advantage of one or the other, but I want to know just how quickly that failover actually happens there between the two. And of course, while we are utilizing this with a wireless AP, and therefore we're not going to judge it too much on its wireless capabilities, I've liked what I've seen so far. And the last thing, I'm still waiting on my adapter to arrive so I can see just how well this thing handles storage. I know there isn't the capability of something like a NAS, there's no SMB file storage here, but until I get that adapter arriving here, and again, might be a while, sold out. When that's there, hopefully that'll allow me to complete a lot more of the testing. But overall, I've always liked the UniFi network management software, and the UCG continues to knock it out the park. Is it perfect? No, but it's as damn close as it can be. On the whole, I like this device. If you're looking at replacing the router in your home or business, and again, you weren't erring towards an ISP route and wanted to go something premium, look at how much Wi-Fi connectivity you actually need. And if you are looking, about integrating a UniFi setup into your home or business environment, this is a very high performance and future-proof option in the market right now. The fact that you can include this and then add a Wi-Fi access point, which, by the way, once you add one of these, you can then start creating your mesh system. This is only 99 Nika. This is a Wi-Fi 7 mini node. You can add that to that and then start adding them more, perhaps with mains to PoE adapters or with other switches along the road. It's a great scale-up item. I know I keep banging on about the $249 element of this, and I know that's not small change. It is a decent amount of money. But for what you're getting, if you look at the price of 10 GBE switches in the market, if you look at the price of high-performance Wi-Fi 7 routers in the market, with some of them, with the basic level devices knocking out about 150 to 200 Nika, and the more pricey elements at 400 to 500 Nika, this serves as a really nice way to get a huge amount of localized bandwidth and the opportunity to scale up towards the Wi-Fi APs in your home or business environment. And let's not forget, thanks to those WAN ports there, although I'm not in love with the fact that 2.5 GBE can't be switched to a LAN, I have to acknowledge that if you're looking for a device with future-proofing as you scale up the internet traffic going in and out of your building, as well as managing the internal traffic as conveniently and as compact a fashion as possible, this is hard to argue with. Is it as good as a router? Not going to be for everyone, but for a business that's looking for a high-performance network management device and pulling in some of those router elements, I love it. And for that reason, I do recommend it. Let me know what you think in the comments. The written review should be finished very, very soon below, along with the video that's already hopefully live on the Express 7 and the UniFi Dream Router. One of those two I definitely like more than the other, but more on that later. Thank you so much for watching. And of course, there are links in the description to get hold of this device and others over on UniFi. So if you found this video helpful, and if you were going to go to their store anyway, make sure those two things are true, please use those links. It really helps us out because me and Eddie, just us here at NAS Compares, get a small commission and it allows us to keep doing what we do. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.